Good morning, everyone. Nice to see you all here today. Uh, it's great to be working with Birches Group this morning on this webinar. The webinar is entitled Achieving Equity and Efficiency, a Practical Approach to Job Evaluation for NGOs. We hope you find this useful. The webinar is being recorded. I will now gladly hand you over to Ella from Birches Group. Thank you, Ella.
Thanks, Ollie. So, hi everyone. Good morning. I'm Ella from Birches Group. So, I handle our strategic partnership with Bond. Welcome to our second webinar in collaboration with Bond. So, before we start, I'd like to let everyone know some house rules for today's webinar. So, as you know, this is an interactive webinar. So, feel free to leave your questions through the chat or ask away during our question and answer portion. And also just want to reiterate what Ollie mentioned. So this session will be recorded, so you'll be receiving a copy after the webinar. So to give you a quick introduction on our speakers for today, or rather first go over today's agenda. So we'll be talking about the importance of establishing equivalent worth and the impact on equity in workforce and tying it together with our job evaluation approach and how it's being implemented in NGO context. So at the end of the session, we'll be having question and answers. So to introduce our speakers for today, so we have Bianca Valencia from Birches Group. So she is our marketing and communications manager. She will be facilitating the question and answer section. And then we have Marie Antonio, our practice lead for workforce management. And then we also have Patrick Sanon, our manager and senior consultant for the organization design team. And then lastly, we have Rhoda Bennett from Thinkwell Global. So she is the senior manager for global talent handling Africa and Asia. So to start off, I'll be giving the floor over to Marie to start the discussion. Marie?
Thanks, Ella. Good morning, everyone. Happy to be here with you all. Before anything else, I wanted for us to zoom out a bit and try to examine today's world of work and the drive towards equity, transparency, and meaningful work to set the context for today's discussion. So I'm sure you're all aware organizations do not operate in isolation, especially in today's aid landscape. Diverse stakeholders, including governments, funders, regulatory bodies, are questioning the relevance and effectiveness of international aid. This increased scrutiny highlights the need for organizations to clearly demonstrate smart resource allocation, equity in workforce management, transparency in policies and practices to maintain stakeholder trust. The question of equity, though, is not new. International conventions like the ILO Convention 100 on Equal Remuneration set the foundation for fair pay practices. The UN SDG 8 emphasizes decent work, highlighting international commitment to fair employment conditions. And more recently, the EU Pay Transparency Directive pushes organizations towards greater accountability and pay transparency. So far, 7 member states have already transposed the directive into national law. But what does this all mean at the organizational level? Particularly for INGOs, there is, as I mentioned, increasing accountability to this diverse group of stakeholders, which include not only donors and member states and boards, but the workforce as well. There is challenge to attract, retain, and motivate staff from a multicultural, multidisciplinary pool, while also ensuring that the workforce structure and capacity is fit for purpose in fulfilling the organization's mission. All of this makes efficiency in workforce management and HR processes critical to sustaining operations and impact. And of course, as I'm sure you're aware, all of this is unfolding against a backdrop of disruptors. New ways of working, remote and hybrid models, organizational downsizing, and the loss of funding. And there's also technology, a growing influence of AI. So at the level of the workforce, employees are increasingly and rightfully demanding clear job roles, opportunities for growth, and transparency and pay, and meaningful work. Now, you might be thinking, what does all of this have to do with job evaluation? And I'm here to tell you that job evaluation provides the foundational structure needed to achieve equity, transparency, and meaningful work. So when we think about equity and transparency, job evaluation provides a corporate standard and framework for assessing and grouping jobs based on complexity and responsibilities. And what that does is that it creates a basis for consistent and transparent salary structures. An organization cannot uphold employees' right to access information about pay ranges for a job if the organization has no standard for setting that in the first place. So without standards, there is no transparency. When it comes to discussions about meaningful work, what job evaluation does is that it clarifies roles and progression pathways. It enables employees to understand their contributions, see opportunities for advancement, and also experience greater alignment to the organization's objectives. So all in all, job evaluation directly impacts employee engagement, retention, and motivation. So that leads us to the questions and challenges that many NGOs face in a multidisciplinary and multicultural workforce. How do we build internal cohesion and pay equity? How does an organization ensure that how it forms its workforce, the type of talent it attracts and retains, is what it actually needs to support its mission? I know that these are loaded questions, but today we'll be viewing it from the lens of workforce formation, which starts really with having clarity on principles, policies, and tools that govern how you build your structure on a solid job foundation. So let's just have a common starting point in understanding that organizations like yours, NGOs, are built again on multidisciplinary and multicultural workforces. That means that you draw talent from both international and national markets. This workforce is organized on the basis of jobs, which again are established and designed to support the execution of mission. So different jobs within the organization have different purposes. And it is the deployment of these jobs into various configurations of teams, functions that allow for the coordinated delivery of mission. And this makes having a clear job evaluation framework even more critical. But first, on the next slide, let's try to define what we mean by a job. So a job is a basic unit of work. It's a bundle of responsibilities that are defined and integrated to ensure that what needs to get done is done. But beyond that, it connects directly to the organization's mission because every job has a purpose. Every job is involved in a level of internal and external engagement, and every job is expected to deliver. And as you see in the next slide, more importantly, our jobs connect us. Jobs connect the people in those roles to something bigger, and that's a shared mission and a bigger community of work. Now, on the next slide, let's go back to workforce management and how jobs form an important part of the employment value proposition. So as you can see here, the EVP has many different dimensions. In mission-driven organizations like yours, affiliation is something that attracts, retains, and motivates talent just as much as pay does. And it's when there is a disconnect between how we design jobs and the mission of the organization that feelings of being stuck or not knowing the purpose of one's job come up. Recently, a client actually shared with me a story about how in their office they have photos and posters of the communities they work and partner with. And one of it is of this girl in red who's carrying drums for water storage. So this was for a wash project. As we know, women, as part of their socialized gender roles, do the bulk of collection and storage of water from the water source. Anyway, during particularly stressful times, people in that organization would remind each other, think of the girl in red. I am sharing this not to romanticize these stories or essentialize women in communities. I'd like to emphasize, though, the power that mission has and affiliation has to motivate a workforce. But mission, affiliation, and purpose would feel empty and disconnected if the organization does not have clear, transparent, and consistent frameworks and policies that actually provide role clarity. So, how do we get there? Where do we start? So, in the next slide, we will be able to see our view of having a healthy and dynamic workforce. We believe that it starts with workforce formation. And what that means is establishing a job architecture that clearly defines and understands the differentiation and progression of work within the organization. And this is important because this is what provides a critical framework for job evaluation and then job design. Now, equally important and connected is having a pay structure that is rooted in a clearly articulated compensation philosophy, one that balances market competitiveness with internal cohesion. Once we have workforce formation, a solid structure in place, the next critical step is managing the individuals effectively within it. And that is where workforce management comes in. This is where we build skills framework that ties recruitment, individual pay management, and learning and development. But on the next slide, let's go back to jobs. So when we are building and establishing a job architecture, there are principles, policies, and tools that provide a framework for establishing job architecture. So we'll be able to see that in this there. Thank you. And so in our view, the guiding principles for establishing a solid job-based foundation are based on the principle of equal pay for work of equal value, but we've articulated them as the principles of equivalent worth and significant difference. Now, it's not enough to just have principles. You need to have policies to operationalize those principles, and that comes in the form of actually having a job evaluation and design framework. Finally, how do you actually implement all of this? This is where tools comes in. And for tools, this is really having a job-based grading structure and job descriptions. So in the next slide, though, let's go back to the principles. So for the principles, as I mentioned, one of the key guiding principles that we've articulated is the principle of significant difference. This is what allows us to group or differentiate jobs based on distinct observable differences. And this is important because this is the basis for hierarchy, career progression, and variances in pay. This is what allows you to build your grading structure. Equally important is equivalent worth. So this is what allows us to establish that, for example, at level X, all jobs have the same level of responsibility and complexity regardless of their occupation. And when you manage a global and multidisciplinary workforce, you can see how establishing equivalent worth has an impact on building equitable pay structures. So remember that it is with your grading structure that you make sense of the labor market data from salary surveys. Otherwise, it's all just noise. So in this slide, in many cases, there are organizations who state that they are guided by the principle of equal pay for work of equal value, that pay equity is important to them, but a closer look reveals something like this. So what's happening here? The client here has grade levels ranging from A to M, and the expectation is that each grade represents a distinct level of work. However, when we did our analysis, this is what was revealed. So here, each of the colors you see here represent a level of work based on the community job classification framework. And you will see that there are multiple levels of work in one employer grade. So for example, let's take a closer look at level E. If you look at level E, you can see, sorry, can we go back? Thank you. So as I was saying, if we look at level E in this chart, you will be able to see there are 3 bars with different colors. So it means that there are 3 levels, distinct levels of work in one employer grade. And so what that means is that if I'm at level E, I might be in a job that is focused on project management and policy development, while at the same time, I have a colleague whose job is more focused on, which is more guideline and process driven with less complexity, but we are at the same level. So we are being paid within the same pay range for completely different levels of complexity and contribution. You will also see in this chart that the same level of work is found across multiple employer grades. So if you look at the purple bar at level B, you will also see that it can be found in employer levels C, D, E, and G. So it means that if I am the person at level B, I am getting paid with the pay range of level B, which is lower, but I'm doing the same level of work as a colleague who is getting paid with higher rates at level G. So now this can be caused by a number of reasons that includes non-existent, or in this case, poorly implemented job evaluation framework. It could also be caused by the use of person-based evaluation factors such as seniority and qualifications that are not relevant to the job. It can also be caused by poor job design and job descriptions. The implications, though, are far-reaching. From this workforce, you can expect a lack of clarity in role, purpose, and scope, demotivation in this workforce, pay inequity. And most importantly, this organization's job structure is not in the optimal form for it to effectively fulfill its mission. So, to talk more about how we might deal with a situation like this, how we might build a solid job evaluation framework, I'll be handing it over now to my colleague, Patrick. Thank you.
Thank you, Marie. In Birches Group, we use a job evaluation methodology that is simple, clear, and transparent. Every job is just 3 things. We have purpose, engagement, and delivery. In Birches Group, we analyze and evaluate jobs using these 3 factors. I now go to the first factor, which is the purpose factor. This would refer to the substantive focus of the job, encompassing the scope, depth, and difficulty of work. It answers the question, why does this job exist? If we look at our janitor example, we look at the core purpose of a janitor's role, which is initially would appear just cleaning, but actually it is about performing physical tasks to ensure cleanliness, orderliness, and hygiene to enable a productivity in the workplace. The next factor that we have to look into is the engagement factor. The engagement factor refers to external and internal interaction. If you could go back 1 slide, please. Thank you. It answers, the engagement factor answers the question, how does this job communicate and connect with others? Going back to the janitor example, we look at the communication responsibilities required of the janitor role. Internally, within the cleaning team, the janitor would be required to communicate with his or her supervisors if the cleaning fluids are running low or if cleaning equipment need to be replaced. Externally, outside his immediate team, the janitor would be required to make people in the office aware of cleaning activities within the workspace. This is the engagement factor. Our next factor, the delivery factor, next slide, please, focuses on the execution of work and the role on the team for supporting business and operational functions. It answers the question, how does this job plan, organize, and deliver work? For the janitor example, you might be familiar with a monitoring sheet posted in the wall where tasks and the timing of performing the tasks are listed down. This sheets helps ensure that all of the janitor's tasks are performed in a timely manner, following established quality standards, therefore ensuring the delivery of work in terms of quality and timeliness. Next slide, please. So basically, each job is just three things: purpose, engagement, and delivery. I'd like to mention also that we further define each of these factors with two indicators for each factor. For purpose, we have the conceptual and the applied indicator. For engagement, we have internal and external engagement. And for delivery, we have timeliness and quality. Next slide, please. When we conduct a job evaluation, we review each of the duty statements of the job description and group them together according to each job evaluation factor: purpose, engagement, and delivery. Once the duty statements are grouped per factor, we are able to evaluate and classify the job according to the values reflected in each Birches Group level. The table above shows the 14 community BG levels and the values associated with each level in each job evaluation factor. For example, a job at Birches Group Level 9 would focus on providing analysis and insight, work towards collaborative relationships and approaches with others within and outside the team, and manage and oversee the execution of a project cycle. It might be too challenging to align each job to the 14 community levels because 14 is quite a lot to handle. So perhaps, Patrick, is there like a tip or trick that you could share with us? In the next slide, we've actually come up with an approach to simplify this. First, we ask ourselves if this is a how or a why job. How jobs are focused on the provision of support or the execution of processes, while why jobs are focused on designing programs, products, and services, or managing or leading organizations. Once we answer that question, we automatically eliminate half of the possible options. We can further divide this, how and why jobs, into 4 clusters of work. Under the how jobs, we have the general and process clusters. And under the why jobs, we have the design and leadership clusters. Next slide, please. Under the how jobs, we have the general support and process clusters. In the general cluster, we have jobs that focus on providing physical support at Birches Group Level 1, mechanical support such as driver at Birches Group Level 2, and general office support roles at Birches Group Level 3. In the process cluster, we have jobs that focus on executing basic transactions at Birches Group Level 4 and complex and intricate transactions at Birches Group Level 5. Jobs at Birches Group Level 6 and 7 focus on quality control, wherein at Birches Group Level 6, these roles focus on ensuring process integrity, while at Birches Group Level 7, these jobs focus on ensuring service platform integrity. Now we move to the why jobs, where we have the design and leadership clusters. In the design cluster, there are jobs for entry-level positions that focus on basic basic conceptual applications for management trainees and young professionals, which are found at Birches Group Level 8, and jobs focusing on providing insight and analysis, which we find at Birches Group Level 9. The next two levels are for seasoned professionals providing adaptive capacity to tailor programs and solutions, which we find at Birches Group Level 10, and authoritative specialists that focus on innovation and creation at Birches Group Level 11. In the leadership clusters, we have jobs that focus on the integration of functions and provision of expertise at Birches Group Level 12, C-level executives, which are normally found in BG 13, and organizational leadership, which we find at Birches Group Level 14. Next slide, please. The results of the job evaluation will inform the possible grade structures that you can utilize for your organization. Hence the question a while ago raised by Marie, is your organization fit for purpose? There are three possible combinations here. We have the standard 1:1, the broadband, and the multiple 1:1 grade structures. Discussions with our clients allow us to select and tailor a grade structure that is right for your organization. As you know, each organization are in different growth stages. Some are expanding, some are shrinking, and of course, there are different organizational contexts given the specific nature of the organization. It is important that we get this right by asking the right questions, as the structure will have an impact on your organization's hierarchy, promotion, and compensation design. This ensures that your organization is fit for purpose. I'll hand it over to, I think, Rhoda or Bianca. I think it's Rhoda.
Yes, it's me. All right. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Patrick, Ella, and Maria. You kind of give me a foundation. And I'm going to talk about the practical or specific on the case study of ThinkWell Global. And just for disclaimer, I've been trained for a number of years with Birches in previous organizations that I've worked. And I've been used the same Birches framework, which involve the purpose, the engagement, and delivery. So yeah, I'm going to share my experience. Thank you. Right, next slide. All right, so before that slide, or maybe before jumping to that slide, so as I said, been trained with Birches for a number of years with their founder and directors, Curtis, and I've been working with them for a number of years in different NGOs that have worked in Africa and Asia, and some of them Europe, to establish the salary structure. But before establishing, of course, salary structure, you need to conduct the job evaluation. So when I joined ThinkWell in 2020, I found out that ThinkWell, they were not using the salary structure. So they were using the past salary history when they are recruiting, the line manager descriptions, the funding availability, and other issues. So when I joined, one of the biggest complaints was inconsistency. So you'll find people there on the same grade 7, but paid differently, okay? And in addressing that, decided to do the job evaluation. Now you can go to the next slide. Yeah, so before I jump in doing the job evaluation, I had to get a buy-in from my talent director, kind of educating her why job evaluation is important, as Patrick, explained. Then after that, we had to review the existing job description. So the job evaluation, the first step, it's very critical to evaluate the job, the existing job descriptions. And we use the Birches framework. So for example, if you are getting the report from Birches, there is a second report which explain very well about the purpose, engagement, and delivery on each grade. So we review the existing job descriptions as talent. And after that, we created the questionnaires to ask both managers and employees. And I will say something here. So Thinkwell is a growing organization and we don't have a lot of employees. So it was easier to conduct interviews for both managers and employees. But if you have maybe many employees, it would be best to select key positions, maybe line managers, and maybe you can do other positions. So in my case, we had clear questionnaires based on the job description. As Patrick said, it's very important to ask the questions actually, the what, the how, and why, in order to know which part this job will be. So the aim of that interviews, it was to validate tasks and responsibilities. And you'll be surprised, or maybe you won't be surprised because you are on this most of the time. One of the key themes came up very early was some employees or some managers, they even didn't know that their subordinate were doing some of the job indicated on the job descriptions. And through that exercise, they now understand and they kind of ask more questions and give more information. So this was very, very critical for us. Then after that, we came up with the competence mapping. And actually, we use very simple Excel to check the skill versus the actual task. Okay. Then after that, we draft the comparative sheets, which shows the current and versus ideal state. And all, throughout, we are using the Birches framework just to know what is the scope, the description, and other things that they're showing. Then we get the stakeholder validation. This is very, very important. We had to present our findings to the line managers and other people, like this is what we found out. These people are in this grade and this will impact maybe the salary or not. After having our job hierarchy, we had to get an approval from top management. I can't show it here because of the time, but we created a detailed Excel, which has, again, the purpose, the engagement and delivery, for each position. And then on the next slide, I'll show you what. Yes. So on our job grading, as I said, it was batches aligned. We came up with 14 job grades, exactly what Patrick, we are showing you. I know in some organizations it's not necessarily to have up to 14 job grade, but for us, we came it. And we came up with the detailed Excel, which has description where we describe the purpose, the scope of that position, the execution, how work is done. It is very important when you conduct the job evaluation to ask really important questions. I know it's a tedious job, but at the end of it, it's worth doing it. Then the autonomy, the engagement, like the example Patrick said about janitor, the internal and the external communication, and if the skill set, of course, are there. Supervision. So for example, grade 1 up to 6, most of them, they're not supervising people, or if they're supervising, maybe they're working with external. Education, experience. We added actually competences. The batches, they don't explicitly say competences, but we added competence for each grade and what we anticipate that position to go. Yes, you can move to the next slide. Okay, can move again. Okay, so because Thinkwell, it was the first time we are doing the job evaluation, we first decided to do a pilot study. So we chose one country, which has a lot of complaints and complexity. So we decided to do that. We conducted a pilot job evaluation in one country. We interviewed employees and managers, and we co-developed the job description comparison. This is very important as HR, not to do it as yourself. You really need to make them as part and parcel of the team when you're doing the job evaluations. And after that, of course, we had an initial feedback and recommendation shared with leadership. And I want to just say one thing that we experienced. So as you know, if you do the job description and the job evaluation, people sometimes they tend to think that maybe we are going to get salary increase or something like that. So they might exaggerate what they are doing on that job description. That's why you really need to be focused on a question that you created. Yes. All right, so from pilot start, so we went now to all other countries. We have like over 10 countries globally. And again, we use Birches aligned hierarchy for post-pilot, exactly what Patrick presented. And we applied that framework across countries. And we continue, engage managers. And I'm very happy to say that. I think Maria as well, you mentioned how the job evaluation can help in other things. So in ThinkWell, we use the hierarchy, the job evaluation, hierarchy for recruitment, for internal promotion, for performance management, employees, relations issues, and training and development. We use them, and now, although at the first we received a lot of resistance, especially for people who were favored, like, okay, I'm your friend, I'm the line manager, I'm just choosing you get this salary, because there is no really job evaluations. But now it is used for those things, and every now and then they use it as a reference document, which is a success story for us. Yes. All right, so the key outcomes at ThinkWell, we defined 14 job levels, and at the end of the exercise, it wasn't easy. I don't want to say it was an easy exercise. I remember to go back and forth to our key account manager from Birches just to ask some questions to ensure that we are following the Birches framework. But at the end, of course, now the country director, the regional director, they like it and they use it. The job titles and salary grades are now standardized. So when we say grade 7, they know these are the title for grade 7. These are the expectation. They are scientific, proven. And it reduces as well, as I said, confusions around roles and advancement. Because the most common question we used to get, why are you saying I'm in grade 8, for example? Why I'm not in grade 9? So the job evaluation and the outcome of it really explain in detail what are required. And now the line manager, actually, they have better conversations around performance, growth, and pay. It's not like an argument. This is the document. This is what we have done. If you want to be, for example, in grade 10, these are the things that you need to work. Can we work together to make sure that, you are climbing the ladder to this? These are the areas of improvement that you need to work on. Yes. All right. So this is the last slide. No, I have only 15 minutes. So this is the last slide, which I want to give advice for people who are, expecting or exploring to do job evaluation. Either it's a new, like ThinkWell, or if it's not new, but you want to do it, again. So the first point, please define your purpose clearly. I think I'm just repeating what Patrick and Maria said. It's very important to define your purpose from the beginning, because for us, people, they created some gossip like, oh, they want to retrench us. They want to reduce us. They want to do, X, Y, Z. So if you define your purpose clearly from the beginning, it will help. And number 2, engage stakeholders early. So as I said, for ThinkWell, we had to do the pilot study, and through the pilot study, one of the feedback we got is, we wish if we could know this is what you are doing, and we will involve X, Y, and Z. So please engage stakeholders early, and start with the pilot. I think I said that. Choose the right framework. For us, we chose Birches. because we are using batches. So Patrick showed, I know in one of the slide, like when you bring your practice, they are able to translate it from grade 1 to grade 14, and of course discuss with you, at least on my experience working with batches on that. So choose, the right framework and easier. I find that batches framework, which clearly explain the purpose, engagement, and delivery, it's very clear, it's very easy, and even easy to communicate. Train evaluators very well. So in my case, I was the only one who had experience in the past working with batches and also doing the job evaluation in other organizations. So the first thing I did, I involved all the people in my department, and we had kind of a training and test the tool that we have before, reaching out to other employees and managers. Use clear, consistent job descriptions, repeating what Patrick as well said. And one key lesson I learned, please separate evaluation from performance. And when I say that, so if your performance, for example, is match, if you can avoid doing it near match, because people, they will translate it, you are doing it because of the performance, and you might not get the clear messages that you want to get. And in our case, I did it remotely. It was post-COVID, and we are not traveling, so it was hard as well sometimes talking to people. And Maria, you mentioned about culture. Actually, there is a lot of multicultural issues that are related to job evaluations, and designing your questions, it's very important because it depends on how you ask the question. That's how you'll get the answer, Of course, ensure fairness and neutrality, because sometimes people, they exaggerate because they think the more they exaggerate, they will be in higher grade. So you really need to ask relevant questions to be fair and fairness. I think job evaluation, it is strategic. It's not just HR or admin tool, as some people sometimes they think it's just an HR tool. And Maria explained it, how it's integrate with the organization mission and visions and other aspects. So yeah. And as I said, link this to the other HR system, from recruitment, promotions, compensations, and even workforce planning. And once you master this, this will be like your guideline on every decision. And as we all know, compensations and benefit is very sensitive. And if you are just doing it without a proper guideline, proper framework, you might bring other issues within your organizations. Communicate transparently, and of course, don't do the job evaluation and then stop. Like, this is my job evaluation. Reach out to batches, for example, now and then, maybe after every other year, if you need to review and conduct another main job evaluation, I think it's good. Or if you have the skill set, it's good as well to check and do it again. Yes. So that's it. I think that's my last slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Rhoda. Lots of good tips and practical advice there. So we do have one question here, but I'm going to throw this to Patrick as our OD expert. So please, can I ask please if safeguarding positions are now included in the reports done by Birches Group? And if so, which BG level would they tend to fall into? So maybe Patrick, you can walk us through why occupations or occupational data tends to be a fallacy, and this might be a controversial topic across a lot of people working in HR.
Yeah, actually, perhaps we just go back to the basic concept of the Birches Group levels. The community levels are generic and can be applied to jobs in any function. Having said that, it's important that we understand that the level would actually depend on the expectations of the job and not to which function the job belongs to. We have to come across and recognize that there are several possible safeguarding roles within the organization. Perhaps there could be one that would focus on quality assurance, monitoring, and measuring the effectiveness of safeguarding programs. And for these positions, we usually find them at Birches Group level 6 or 7. However, there are some roles that focus that some safeguarding roles that focus on the design and rollout of safeguarding programs, which we may find them at Birches Group levels 9, 10, or even 11. Again, it's we go back to the concept that these are grade driven and not job driven. The evaluation is driven not because they are in the safeguarding function role, but they are driven by the main focus and expectation of the job. Are they expected to do quality control? Are they expected to design projects or programs? Are they expected to define program project cycles? And this is what we look at to determine the grade.
All right, thank you, Patrick. Next question, and maybe any of you guys can answer this, and Rhoda, feel free to chime in based on your real world experience in ThinkWell. How can Birches Group job evaluation method be applied to an Ontario pay equity analysis that requires comparing male and female job classes using value points for each position? This is quite a different approach, but maybe anyone can chime in.
I can start.
Mm-hmm.
So in ThinkWell, actually, we use purely the Birches grade. We don't say because you are female, then you'll be paid low, or male, then you'll be paid high. However, while I was doing the job evaluation, I found out inconsistency in gender. As we all know, that is a big thing. And through the job evaluation, we managed to correct it, because we said, no, they're all technical advisor. They're all, the purpose of this job is this, this is how they deliver. This is why they deliver, everything. So I remember there are some positions we had to ask for an approval because the salary increase was slightly higher. Because when they were hired, they were given kind of a lower level position. So yeah, we recognize that challenge, but in ThinkWell, we don't look on gender to the pay. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Rhoda, for that. Maybe I'll just add to that as well. So the Birches Group evaluation framework does not use a points factor system. As Patrick described earlier, we only look at the 3 factors: purpose, engagement, and delivery. Now, the whole point of that is to remove any person-based characteristics or factors when you evaluate the job. Now, when we are talking about pay gap analysis or pay equity analysis, this is more related to how we are managing our workforce, right? And this will be answered more if we have an understanding of the distribution of people across the different grade levels. We can look at not just gender, but different demographics as well. But what that tells you is patterns, right, and tendencies within the organization. For job evaluation, there should not be any person-based factors that are considered.
All right, so we'll move on to the next question. Thank you, Marie. Thank you, Rhoda. From Philippa, wondering about years after the mass evaluation are conducted, do you have annual benchmarking data that you share so organizations can benchmark their roles against others using Birches Group to ensure health check of evaluations? Anyone want to take that?
So perhaps one thing that I can perhaps suggest is perhaps if you would like, or if you're interested to join our surveys, our survey information provides a good benchmark to the 14 Birches Group levels, and this would help you validate whether you are indeed, in a way, healthy or quote unquote fit for purpose.
And participating in surveys is also a good way to catch any changes that may have happened in, especially with the job evaluation, because to participate in the survey, there's always a job evaluation sort of check that you have to go through as we validate your data for the year. So feel free to join our surveys just so you can do your annual benchmarking, and then we can also talk to you more about other job evaluation issues that we might spot that requires more comprehensive evaluation by our team, right? From Janet, how do gender equity issues come into play regarding job evaluation?
Maybe I'll
Perfect for
start.
you, Marie.
Thank you, Bianca. So thanks, Janet, for that question. As I mentioned earlier, the whole point of having a job evaluation framework is to have an objective framework with which you assess and evaluate the level of responsibility scope of each job, and that creates the structure for your organization. And through this, we do it allows for the elimination of any person-based factors of evaluation. Now, in reality, we know that, in different organizations or maybe in different contexts, there may be roles that are gendered, right? Where we would see maybe a higher number of women or men in a specific role. And so, linking to what I said again earlier, now this is beyond just designing your jobs, because establishing your job structure is all about having that foundation of structure, right? Where you have a standard that's objective. But then what happens next is looking at the individuals within that structure. And in order to do this, you would have to establish a program of pay equity. And that starts with first collecting data and analyzing if you do have pay gaps or pay disparities, seeing if it's related to any other factors related to the demographics of a person, could be age, could be gender. And then from there, you can implement measures and how you could establish an actual standard for determining where people fall within the pay range that is not based on who they are or what their demographics are. So it's all related. I hope I answered that. Bianca?
All right, so next question from Nicola. Some organizations prefer not to share the job evaluation tool or perhaps the job evaluation approach that they used when evaluating their jobs within their organization. Any views on that? This ties nicely
Yeah.
to achieving equity.
Yeah, I think I'll respond to that. As far as Birches Group is concerned, our advocacy is to be able to share with clients simple, clear, and transparent job evaluation methodology. And that means making people aware of what are the expectations of jobs at Birches Group level 9, 10, and 11. And by being transparent, that actually creates that environment of equity wherein people can actually see whether the expectations are indeed lining up to the appropriate grade level for each of these positions. So there are benefits to having equity, having transparency, and there are indeed organizations that have benefited from this simple, clear, and transparent approach.
What about you, Rhoda? What was the approach in Think Well?
Yeah, I wanted to say almost similar thing that Patrick said. Transparency is key when you do that, okay? And actually for ThinkWell, once we completed, we shared the job hierarchy to the country directors and regional directors, we are taking it slow because, as you know, it's complex. So if you just share without bringing awareness, why this, why that, it might bring more questions. But transparent, it's very important, and you can tell them, why we ask you these questions based on the job descriptions and the actual work that you are doing. Yeah. So I would say that. And one more point I wanted to add previously on gender. and on the specific person, you have to be very careful, if at all you do your job description by yourself or with the help of batches, to separate an individual with the position. It's very common for line managers or for HR saying something like, yeah, but Rhoda is doing XYZ, but Rhoda is always doing, it's not about Rhoda, it's about the HR role that Rhoda is performing. If Rhoda is not there, just think, close your eyes, Rhoda is not there, what this person is supposed to do. Yeah, so I wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rhoda. And Nicola even had a follow-up comment. Would that also include sharing with all employees the factors and scoring methodology? So in Birches Group's case, it's the 3 factors, then for sure, right? I think employees need to know what went into the job evaluation. But to Rhoda's point, you have to be careful also as to how you would communicate that with staff. All right, so maybe this is a question for Patrick. From Tanya, what are the key differences or pros and cons of the Birches Group job evaluation system compared to a points-based analytical job evaluation system such as HAY, which looks at 4 factors, typically management responsibility, problem solving and analysis, and knowledge and skill and impact?
Yeah, perhaps I'll respond by focusing on perhaps the benefit or perhaps the advantage of using Birches Group. When you use the Birches Group approach, you actually are able to focus on the key expectations or the key focus of the job. And that is very important. It's not really about sometimes certain indicators would throw us off and lead the discussion towards some direction. But if you keep it focused on the purpose, what is the substantive focus of the role, how is this role contributing to the larger mission, then it makes for an easier evaluation of the position. And perhaps one thing also that makes this advantageous as against a points-based system is sometimes in a points-based approach, we tend to focus on the points. We try to find a way to manage the points so it comes out with the intended design. But as HR professionals and as managers, we have a clear understanding of where certain positions should be. And the Birches Group approach allows you to design the position for that intended role. And this is why when we say job evaluation, it usually goes back to back with job design, because you evaluate the job. If it's aligned, well, your design is good. But if it's not aligned to the intended level, then we have to make adjustments in the job design and therefore make adjustments to the job description so it arrives at the intended level.
Thank you, Patrick. Marie?
Yeah, thank you, Patrick, for that. Maybe just to add that typically for points-based systems, it actually makes it harder to be transparent. I have used Hay previously in another life, and just because of the intricacies of determining the points and having to align and find out their score for that specific factor, even within HR, not everyone understands it, right? So how much more when you have to communicate this to staff? So the value of having just 3 factors and 6 indicators for the Birches Group system is that this is something that is easily communicable and allows HR to be more transparent in a way that it's not complex and hard to understand. Thank you.
Thank you, Marie. And perhaps, Patrick, you can take our last question. Given the various job evaluation methodologies out there, is there any framework or recommendation on how to match various job evaluation methodologies?
Okay, of course, in our practice of job evaluation, there are more or less some equivalences that we see when we compare with different job evaluation systems or approaches. But one thing that I would perhaps mention in terms of the different job evaluation methodology, it really depends on how ready the organization is to adopt a simple, clear, and transparent approach. Perhaps some have some baggage that would lead them to perhaps a points rating job evaluation system, but there are some wherein perhaps the Birches Group methodology, where we just focus on 3 factors, would be a good fit for them because it's clear, it's simple, and it's transparent, easy to understand. And these are perhaps things that we have to accept as professionals, like, is the organization ready for this type of approach? So we do that assessment. We're happy to help you transition your organization to the Birches Group methodology if you so choose to.
Thank you, Patrick. And I know we're right on time, a little over, but maybe just to close out this session, here are some subscription options for you should you choose to participate in Birches Group surveys. Again, if you would like to maybe talk about a more comprehensive job evaluation service, then feel free to get in touch with Birches Group or your bond representative. Next slide, please. And just a plug before we go. Oh, and we have an exclusive offer also for bond regarding survey participation. So please reach out to us for that. Just one last plug. We do have a workshop happening in Kenya, Skills in Action. If you want to know more about workforce management, how to achieve equity in your workforce, how to ensure equitable HR practices, from recruitment to compensation management, to learning and development, and even performance management, join this workshop. If you have teams that are based in Kenya or East Africa, please send them to this workshop or reach out to Birches Group for more questions. All right. So thank you again, everyone. Just 2 minutes beyond time, but thank you again for your time. Thank you, panelists, for sharing your thoughts with us today. And thank you, everyone. Bye.